You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph, and today we are going to be talking about some 49ers news. I mean, the 49ers cut a few players to get down to the 80 roster limit at the moment. That is before they have to cut down to 53. So I'll recap some of those moves that the team made, as well as who I'm going to be looking at in the 49ers final preseason game against the Texans. That game will be happening tomorrow. We're all excited because the final preseason game means that we're that much closer to the beginning of the season, and I know that we're all excited for that. What's going on, everyone? So welcome. Thank you for being on today. And really quickly, before we get started, I just wanted to say the last video I posted got 20 likes. We hit the 20 like goal. Shout out to you. Let's try to get 25 likes in this video right now. You already know the vibes. Let's subscribe. Let's like. Let's go. Appreciate it. All right. Let's talk about some of these roster cuts that the 49ers made in order to get to the 80 players. All right. So before they announced any cuts, they placed a player on the PUP list. That is cornerback Jason Verrett. And pretty much what that move means is that, one, it was a smart move on the team's part. He won't count towards the 53 while he's on the PUP list, but it also means he won't be activated until after week 4. To me, a little risky because if any of your top two, Charvarius Ward, Emmanuel Moseley get hurt in the first 4 weeks, there's a huge drop-off in quality of depth. Behind those guys, you would be left with Deommodore Lenoir and Ambry Thomas. Probably Lenoir gets the nod first as the, immediate backup after either one of those guys. But still, it's a little risky. But at the same time, not too much. It's only 4 weeks. So I think that's a good move on the team's part. As we know, the cuts down to 53 are going to be brutal. There's going to be a lot of good, talented players that are going to be cut as part of that. So if they can make this move to have Verrett on the PUP list, it opens up one extra spot, at least for 4 weeks. And by then, some roster decisions should be a lot clearer. It'll be a much easier decision on, who to cut for Jason Verrett after week 4, right? So, and also I think this move is a vote of confidence that Emmanuel Moseley and Charvarius Ward are going to be 100% come week 1. It seems to be trending that way, but it's also always good to know, are they going to be 100% or are they going to be 90% in good to go week 1? Sounds like they'll be 100. So that's always good to know. Kyle Shanahan did say that Charvarius Ward was going to return to practice this week. So all a good sign. All seems to be heading in that direction that we'll have Moseley and Ward out there week 1. So what's going on, Dawson? So in addition to some of the that move that they made with Verrett, they placed Kalia Davis on the NFI list. Kalia Davis is one of the rookies, and he tore his ACL, I think, in the fall, so it was pretty late. And we always expected that he was going to redshirt this year, so not a surprise that he's being put on the NFI list. Again, opens up a roster spot, and the team released Tanner Hudson. That was a bit of a surprise because I liked Hudson, but at the same time, the team does have a lot of options at the tight end position right now. So Hudson, unfortunately, at the bottom of that list. So he got released. And the 49ers also waived linebacker Jeremiah Jamel. He is one of the undrafted free agents that the 49ers brought on. So not entirely surprising there. The 49ers are pretty deep at linebacker. And of course, being an undrafted free agent, if you don't show all that much, you're probably going to get cut as well. So he was waived and will be subject to waivers. The 49ers also waived injured offensive lineman Sam Schluter. So because they waived injured him, gave him that designation, he could revert to the 49ers injured reserve after clearing waivers, which might happen either today or tomorrow. Not entirely sure on Sam Schluter. Austin Mack, he was one of the first players waived in the second wave of cuttings. So Austin Mack, he got cleared from waivers, so he reverts back to the 49ers IR. The team can always release him from IR with an injury settlement, but as of right now, that's where he is. Some other injury news. Shanahan says Elijah Mitchell, who, as we know, has had his hamstring injury, he is on track to return by week 1, 49ers season opener in Chicago. So that's really good news that, it sounds like the running back group will be full squad for that first game. That's all we want to hear. Shanahan also gave some updates on Mcglinchey. He said he's pretty optimistic that he'll be back for week 1, but that there's a chance he could miss time. I know a lot of people are worried about the right tackle position because if Mcglinchey isn't out there, there is a huge drop-off as well in, the 49ers options. We've seen a lot of Colton McKivitz for the team. So, yeah, it would be great if he's back week 1. And Kyle Shanahan also gave some clarity on, the injury that he's experiencing right now. It wasn't the same injury as, the one that kept him out of last season, but it was to the same leg. So somewhat connected. Maybe it could be one of those things that, you try to overcompensate on another muscle because your one muscle is not quite, you know what? Forget it. I'm no doctor, but that's just, I'm not going to give a medical opinion on that, but it sounds like he'll be back for week 1. Hopefully that's the hope. And on KMBR, actually, because Kyle Shanahan was on KMBR today, he added that he said, we're not too concerned with Mike. We feel it'll be good, but we'll wait and see right now. So sounds like their optimism, but cautious optimism, of course. And hopefully Mcglinchey will be ready to go by week 1. All right, now let's start talking about this game, all right? This game that's going to be happening tomorrow, the 49ers' final preseason game. Kyle Shanahan yesterday did say the starters won't play more than a half, okay? So Trey Lance is not playing more than a half. And in fact, today he went on KMBR and said he would like to get a couple of drives for Trey Lance. So Trey Lance may be only looking at a couple of drives, and then maybe the rest of the starters play a half at most. That's pretty much what he said yesterday. That's at a half at most. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to play the entire first half, just that at most it would be a first half, but hasn't decided how long they'll play quite yet. But, maybe for Trey Lance, he did make the decision overnight. It sounds like it's going to be a couple of drives for him. So let's just get right into some of these players that, I'm going to be watching in this game. I'm curious to know what players you guys are going to be watching in this game. Let me know in the comments who you will be focused on. I'm going to start off with the Treys. Okay? The Treys, Trey Lance and Trey Sermon. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on them. Callie, I'll answer your question on Poe in a second because he's actually one of the guys I'm going to be looking at as well. But the Treys, man. Trey Lance, for obvious reasons. Every time he's out there, we're going to get a good look at him. We're going to be focused on what he's doing. We can't get enough of him. And so we watch him very intently. And we're excited. We can't help it, okay? So it's not obviously for bad reasons that we're keeping an eye on Trey Lance. We just want to see what he does this time. So if it sounds like he's going to get a couple of drives, we want to see what he does with those drives. Can he get a long drive going? Can he score? Things of that nature. And for Trey Sermon, it's actually quite the opposite while we're keeping an eye on him. There's a lot of questions as to, whether he's on the roster bubble because in these preseason games so far, he hasn't really shown a lot of growth. And, I was really pulling for him because at training camp, I thought, there were moments, especially in that second week, where he kind of came along a little bit. It looked like he was doing better. certainly better than, last season, but is what he's doing now really enough to keep him around? I mean, he was the team's third round pick last year. So you would think just off of that alone, that gives him, somewhat of an edge to stick around, just because the team might not be ready to give up on him quite yet. And I wouldn't blame him if they don't. But you always wonder, has he really done enough? Or has, damage kind of already been done? Has he shown enough that he doesn't deserve to be on this roster? He's been outperformed by some of the other running backs on the roster, ones that are lower on the depth chart than him. Jordan Mason, I would even argue Jermichael Hasty, and TDP had a good game last preseason game. So, those guys below him on the depth chart are kind of showing him up. And so Trey Sermon, I'm going to be keeping an eye on him. Is he getting blocks up front, first of all? Because I feel like in these last 2 preseason games, like, he's kind of had a tough go at that. The offensive line at times isn't able to hold those blocks for him. But at the same time, he's a little indecisive. So him being indecisive in the backfield makes it a little tougher, I think, for the offensive line to hold their guy, while he's making a decision back there, dancing around. And so I want to see those 2 things. Is the offensive line doing him any favors? If they're getting their blocks and he has time to make a decision, is he making that decision quickly? So those are the things I'm going to be keeping an eye on for Trey Sermon, because, you want to see growth over these games. And I mean, as of right now, he's the 3rd running back on the depth chart. And so you would hate to see him in the regular season getting some significant snaps, maybe, and have him be indecisive when, maybe you could have had another running back getting those snaps. So we'll see on Trey Sermon. I'm not ready to count him out quite yet. Like, I want to see something good from him. So we'll see how he does in tomorrow's game versus the Texans. And another guy that I'm going to be looking at, what's going on, Ty? Wait, let me get to some comments really quick. Some of you are talking about Sermon, so let's stick on Sermon here. Niner Empire, Blood Drain. He says Sermon hesitates or not as decisive in practice too, or due to vanilla play calls with second and third stringers. That's also true. I mean, I think to an extent, the 49ers aren't really showing their hand too much in these preseason games. It's a lot of, like you said, it's a lot of vanilla play calls. And, to an extent, it may not put Trey Sermon in the best position to win. But at the same time, I mean, you do want to see him get something going with what's being called out there. I mean, some of the other running backs are dealing with the same vanilla play calls, and they're still getting, some good yardage on their carries. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's the indecisiveness overall for Trey Sermon that's the real sticking point on, why his stat lines haven't been so great, and then also like how fans are perceiving him at the moment. I appreciate it, by the way. Ty asks, Steph, is that a Niners shirt? No, it is not. This is an orange shirt. I got this a few years ago at the Nike store in New York. So, no, it's just an orange shirt. Usually it's a sleep shirt or my workout shirt. What's going on? Niner Fanatic Podcast. Great content on there as well. Check them out. Ty asks, has Hasty clearly outperformed Sermon thus far? Clearly, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it could definitely be argued whether Hasty has done a little bit better. But at the same time, usually when Hasty's out there, it's against, third stringers, whereas Trey Sermon, he's been starting these preseason games. So most likely going against some first stringers and mostly second stringers. So, that's something to keep in mind as well. Although, I don't know. I mean, Hasty has been who Hasty has always been in these preseason games. Like we know who he is, and he's continued to be that. So, which is good. I mean, he's pretty solid in what he does. I know Grant Cohn has mentioned, like, there isn't another running back on this team that really gives you what JaMycal Hasty gives you. And so that's certainly been true throughout, camp and also preseason. I like Hasty as a receiving back, actually. I think that's somewhat of a something they can unleash out of Hasty with Anthony Lynn, because I like the way Hasty cuts. Like, we all know, like, Hasty has that like one cut and he wins kind of thing. And I think with him being a receiving back, he can beat some linebackers that way. So I like Hasty. I mean, yeah, you can certainly make the argument that he has outperformed Trey Sermon to this point. Callie says, I don't think Sermon was good in pass pro versus Minnesota. Yeah, and that's another thing to consider, right? Pass protection is a huge part of, football that a lot of fans forget about. I mean, it's not just about what you do with the ball in your hands, but how you protect your quarterback. That definitely adds value. And a lot of the time, if you can't pass protect, you're not going to make it on the field. You're not going to make it in the NFL, because that's a huge part of being a running back in the NFL. You have to be able to protect your quarterback and be able to, pass protect. So, yeah, I mean, that's another good point. Something that is somewhat lacking in his game, and another thing to keep an eye on for Trey Sermon tonight. Dawson says, needs Sermon to show why he's different from the rest of the running back room, in my opinion. Yeah, it seems like I would say that Trey Sermon probably is better out in space. And he's gotten a few opportunities where they've given him the ball in space and he still hasn't done too much with it, or what he has done wasn't all too much. I think in the first preseason game, his best his best play was on a screen. And again, he's out in space. I think that's something that benefits him and his style of running. But, he needs to do something with those opportunities, right? And so, yeah, Dawson, to your point, I think he does need to show how he's not just how he's different, but how he's different and better from the rest of the running back group. So definitely something to consider. Niner Fanatic Podcast asks, release or trade, Sermon or Wilson? That's a tough one. I don't understand why there's this notion that Jeff Wilson Jr. is a candidate to be traded. I don't see that. One being some of this depth in the running back group, it's been somewhat shaky, right? I mean, we've seen it. Trey Sermon is somewhat of a question mark. TDP, the first preseason game, he didn't do all that much. The second, he looked a lot better, but shaky, so inconsistent, right? And then you have JaMycal Hasty and Jordan Mason, who have looked great, but have also only been playing towards the end of games. So, I don't know if I don't see Jeff Wilson Jr. as being someone who's going to be released at all. And quite frankly, I don't think he's going to be someone that they'll trade. The team likes him a lot. I mean, he's pretty affordable for the team right now for what he's able to give you. He's probably the biggest lock, I would say, as far as like, what he brings you, and you can be confident in what he is. He hasn't changed. I know a lot of, fans' perception on Jeff Wilson Jr. has changed maybe because of last season, but he wasn't 100% at all when he came back from his injury last season. And you can tell what we saw in training camp was an entirely different player, and he looked like his old self. And I think he even said, like, he feels like his old self now. So I wouldn't count Jeff Wilson out at all. Sermon, on the other hand, I gotta wonder if he's on the roster bubble. Just wonder. I don't know if would be any trade value for him, because if he can't make it in a running back friendly team like the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan, like, what team is really going to be interested in him? A lot of people didn't even like that pick in the third round for the 49ers to begin with. So I don't know if there would be any good value in trading Trey Sermon. So not sure. I mean, I hope he has a good game tomorrow, but yeah, he has we'll see. I think the fact, again, like I mentioned, the fact that it's only his second year, that might be his only saving grace at this moment. If the team's not ready to quite give up on him quite yet. Yeah. Yeah, the RB's got to help protect Trey. That's for sure. Ty says Wilson Jr. runs hard when he's right. We love that dude. Yeah, and another thing about Jeff Wilson Jr. is he's probably the best pass catching back that the 49ers have. And you bet your ass that Anthony Lynn loves that about him and is going to, use that to his advantage. So again, don't see Jeff Wilson Jr. as someone who, is in jeopardy of not being on this team. Daryl asks, do you think we can win a Super Bowl with Kyle? He doesn't have that killer instinct we need from a head coach to win a must-win game. Super Bowl, Kansas City playoff against the Lambs. Thoughts? I think Kyle Shanahan is one of the better coaches in the league. So do I think he can win a Super Bowl? Yes, but unfortunately for him and us, I mean, there's been some mistakes. I think the biggest thing with Kyle Shanahan is his game management, his time management at times. In some of those really important games, it's almost like he overthinks some things. And that's kind of gotten in the way at times towards the end of some of those games, keeping his foot on the gas pedal has also been an issue, but I think that over time he's learned from those mistakes, and hopefully with a quarterback like Trey Lance as well, he can learn to, close out those things. It was kind of the same thing with Andy Reid, like for somewhat different reasons, but Andy Reid, you see how close he was so many times before, finally getting his Super Bowl with the Chiefs. And I think, for Kyle, it's going to end up being the same way. Hopefully Kyle Shanahan can figure it out, while he's on the 49ers, because I would hate to see him go for any reason. But yeah, I think Kyle Shanahan could win a Super Bowl, and this team is definitely in position. It's definitely stacked to be able to do that. And the way that they've built this roster, they're going to be really good for a long time. So, yeah, I'm pretty hopeful. Hopefully I'm not biased though. But let's get back into some of these other players I'm going to be watching, and let me know in the comments who you guys are going to be watching in the 49ers final preseason game tomorrow. Let's see. So I got Aaron Banks. So Aaron Banks is someone I will keep an eye on, and he's been up and down. He had a perfect game, like clean slate in the first preseason game versus the Packers. And then he gave up a few pressures in the second preseason game versus the Vikings. Although I didn't think it was a terrible game from him, but I do see that there's like this perception from fans that like he might not make the team either. Like, I don't know what it is about some fans that like any like mistake, or if a player is not perfect, they're like, oh, he's gonna get cut, like kind of thing. No, Aaron Banks is not getting cut, people. But the reason that I'm gonna be keeping an eye on him in this game is I just want to see how he does compared to the second preseason game, and I figure he's going to get a good amount of snaps with the first team unit in this one. We'll get to see the full offensive line, all of the starters. Well, except for Mike Mcglinchey, right? But I think we'll get a good look at as good of a look on the starting offensive line as we could get before week one, minus Mike Mcglinchey. So I'll be keeping an eye on really the entire offensive line, the starting unit, but also, Aaron Banks, especially to see like how he does in this one. And, is he growing? Is he improving? If he's making mistakes, is he making the same mistake twice? Things like that. Jason Poe, another guy that I'm going to be looking at. And I know, Callie, you asked me, what were my thoughts on Jason Poe? Do I think that he makes the team? That's a tough one. I mean, and I think a lot of it is going to be decided on how he does in this game. If he has another really good game, I think it's going to push the team to make a tough decision. But I think the team really likes what they have in Jason Poe. There was some reports that he got first team reps in practice earlier this week. I mean, I don't know. Kyle Shanahan kind of, brush that off like it wasn't that big of a deal. And maybe it wasn't. I'm not sure. But, it seems like the team likes him. So can he push for a roster spot? And that's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Like if he has another great game, yeah, you have to really consider that. And I mean, protect him, keep him on the roster. You don't want to, cut him and then see him go to another team, because Jason Poe looks like the kind of guy that even if he's not going to be a starter this year, he's going to be a starter for you very soon. And he also has that positional versatility. He could play center as well, although 49ers haven't really been using him there. But just the fact that he could do that, he could be an emergency center. He could play some fullback as well. We already know he's a great blocker. So, and he's very athletic. He's great at getting to the second level. He's very quick. Trent Williams hyped him up again this week. Trent Williams loves this kid. And some of these quotes that I got Trent Williams talking about Jason Poe, he said, "You never really see that type of athleticism from the guard position." And then the second one, this one's my favorite. "He's strong as an ox and quick as a cat." What a quote. That's a great one. But definitely like that. Pretty much I give up. That pretty much describes what Jason Poe is, for this team and what he's shown so far. I know Brad Graham, the SF Niner, shout out him. He calls Jason Poe the doorstop because he's short. He's so tiny. But he has that low center of gravity where like he's low man wins and he gets leverage like right off the bat because he's so small. It's quite the spectacle. Not every small offensive lineman is going to be good, but it just so happens Poe is just has the right bit of everything. And he's been proving to be someone who is definitely worthy of consideration for a spot on this roster. And at times the offensive line, especially some of the depth, has looked shaky, so that can favor for Jason Poe in maybe making this team. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And so if he has another good game, that's why I'll be keeping an eye on him, because if he has another good game, he's really gonna push the envelope and push for a final 53 roster spot. Yeah, Ty said words are hard. Yeah, especially for me. Sometimes get up here and I just stumble all over my words. The struggle. Yeah, Ty says Poe has proven he should be on the team. He's valuable depth this season and beyond. I agree. I think at this point, just because he looks like someone who's definitely could be a starter down the line, you got to protect that. And in my opinion, you can't risk him getting swooped by someone else because one, it was already a big deal that the 49ers were able to get him as an undrafted free agent. And if I recall, they gave him like a good amount of money to snag him up. So even before he stepped on the field with the 49ers and showed them all this, like they already coveted him quite a lot. So, based on all of this, I would be pretty surprised if they didn't find a spot for him on this roster. So we'll see. Ty says, I want to see Poe line up as a tight end eligible and Kyle sent him out on pass plays. I mean, he could do it. You guys remember his pre-draft video that he put out that made the rounds on 49ers Twitter? Like, that man can move and he can catch the ball, and that would definitely be entertaining. Yeah, Callie says, Poe has that low leverage, low man wins. Yes, absolutely. Shot J says, as Poe polishes his technique, he's going to be such a menace. Yeah, and if you guys haven't watched it, I put out the all 22, all of his snaps from the preseason game against the Vikings for Jason Poe. So if you guys haven't watched that yet, go ahead and watch it. It's a pretty good it pretty much just shows everything that he is. And yes, some of the things that he still does need to polish. There was some whiffs on the run blocking a little bit, but overall really good performance from him in that game. So you guys check it out if you haven't already. Definitely a big Jason Poe fan. Brandon West says Poe deserves reps with first team as a center. It's been interesting. I kind of expected the team to at least have a look at Poe as a center, just because like that's been a big question mark for the team throughout training camp. And I've been surprised that they haven't done that yet. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like he's a candidate for center, and certainly not with the first team. I think Jake Brendel pretty much has that down at the moment. But regardless, he might deserve some first team reps somewhere else. I don't know, but Jason Poe needs to make this roster, in my opinion. All right, so he's someone I'm going to be keeping an eye on. And in particular, will he be getting some snaps versus better competition? Again, a lot of the times that he's in these games, he's coming in the second half, going against third, fourth stringers. Is he going to have an opportunity in this game to play against, first stringer, second stringers? I don't know. So I would like to see it though. So that's something I'll also keep an eye on. And if his run blocking will be better in this game than it was last week. Overall, I thought he played well last week, but run blocking sometimes could have been better. So I'll keep an eye on that. Moving on, another offensive player that I'll keep an eye on is Brock Purdy. Kind of on that same level of, should he make the roster based on, how good he's looked out there? Do the 49ers keep 3 quarterbacks? I think that's a big question that a lot of fans are asking themselves right now. And there seems to be this, there's a ton of support behind Brock Purdy. I don't know if it's the Iowa State thing. I don't know if it's the mystery relevant thing, but the 49er fans seem to, really like Brock Purdy. And I like him too. It's not that I don't. But I'd be pretty surprised if they kept 3 quarterbacks. I don't know why. I just feel like there's other positions that, I'd like to see that one roster spot go to. But who knows? I mean, I wouldn't be mad or surprised if they kept Brock Purdy around as well. But let's face it. I mean, if they did cut him, I personally don't think he's going to get picked up by another team. I think he sticks around for the 49ers practice squad, and I'd be pretty happy with that. Same thing happened with Nate Sutfield. The 49ers released Nate Sutfield. He ended up on the practice squad, and that was that. I mean, you guys forgot all about that, and same thing can happen with Brock Purdy. So if he gets cut, it doesn't mean he's automatically going to get picked up. Maybe he will. It won't be the end of the world, even if he does. So I like Purdy, but we'll see if, he makes this team. Certainly, I mean, if he has a really good showing again, it could have the 49ers kind of making that tough decision. It could force them to, maybe keep him around, but who knows? We'll have to see. Again, Brock Purdy is someone who's going against third stringers, fourth stringers, at the end of the games. So, although last week he did get some good amount of snaps throughout the game where Sutfield and Purdy were rotating. So he got some good snaps then. But I don't know. We'll see. Ty says it's because Purdy is a love child of Jimmy G and Nick Mullins. Yeah, and if this is the case, I mean, Kyle Shanahan loves him already, Daryl says, I think they should keep Purdy, just my opinion. Yeah, I mean, they can. I wouldn't be upset if they did, nor would I be surprised. I feel again, I'm leaning towards no, they don't, but, quarterback depth is important as well, so you might need a third stringer. Callie says, I like Brock. Yes. 49er fans, a lot of you guys like Brock Purdy. It's so funny because, he's a terrible practice player. He looks terrible in practice most of the time. Makes, mistakes, just doesn't look. But in games, he turns it on. He does look really good in games. He makes some nice plays. So, yeah, that's Brock Purdy, the Brock Purdy experience. All right. Let me move on to some defensive players that I'm going to be looking at. Yeah, definitely he's more athletic. I think that's the theme with a lot of the 49ers quarterbacks is they are athletic and they're all pretty calm in the pocket. They all have that in common. And I mean, I think that's good for this team. They all have, if one of them gets hurt, God forbid Trey Lance gets hurt, there's some continuity there in what, Nate Sutfield brings you. So I don't think they would miss a beat, to be honest. All right, really quickly, just a reminder, guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel, show some love, come on, let's get those likes up. let's get these subscriptions going. And yeah, more good content is on the way. All right, let's talk about these defensive players I'll be keeping an eye on. Not as many on the defensive side I'll be keeping an eye on, just because to me a lot of it is we already kind of know what's going to happen in a way. The only questions I do have, the biggest one is Ambry Thomas. Is Ambry Thomas on the roster bubble? Do you guys think? Can he show the team he deserves to stay on the roster, or is he already going to make the roster just because, the team maybe just isn't ready to give up on him quite yet? So I don't know. These are the questions I'll be asking. Obviously, I want to see a better showing out of Ambry Thomas. And I got to wonder, if he plays poorly in this game, does it put him in jeopardy of getting cut? I don't know. Kyle Shanahan said earlier in the week, I just want to see him battle to make the team. And that's interesting because it almost leads you to believe that maybe he's just not seeing that fire in Ambry Thomas. I just want to see him battle. Like, I just want him to, try hard to make the team. And yeah, I could definitely see that. Ambry Thomas sometimes reminds me of Witherspoon in some ways, like that. To me, it's a confidence thing with Ambry, and the more plays that he makes, the more confidence builds. But the one time he has a bad play, like, he gets down on himself and then it kind of spirals. So it's very, very volatile for Ambry. And I think also, like, a lot of the time we see him in position to make a play, but he just doesn't finish. He doesn't have that, like, aggression, that attack mode, to finish off a play, to get a pass breakup, things like that. He's shown it. He's flashed it at times. And every time I see it, I'm like, yes, there you go. Let's see more of that. But I want to see it consistently. And I wonder if Kyle Shanahan is maybe feeling the same at the moment. So Ambry Thomas, very curious to see if he, can get something good going in this game, and, see if the team either cuts him or, gives him an opportunity. I will say that, like, it might be a little exaggerated to say that he's on the roster bubble, because there isn't a lot of quality depth behind, not behind him, but after the first two corners, and you could even argue Jason Verrett when he's back. After those three guys, there's Lenore, and then I would say Ambry Thomas would probably be the guy after that. So that's five guys that you have. And so Ambry Thomas being your fifth corner is not, I guess, the worst thing in the world. So we'll see. Another player that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, Tariq Castro-Fields. He struggled in these preseason games, and the 49ers could maybe continue to give him a shot, just because, they did draft him after all. But at the same time, he really hasn't proven to be, that effective in these games. And so what I'll be keeping an eye on, can he just show anything positive? I think it's a long shot for him to make the team anyway right now, but, is he good enough to also want to keep on the practice squad? My guess would be yes, but, you never know. The good thing for these teams, I think the NFL, ever since the pandemic, so this is still a thing, the teams could have 16 players on their practice squad. So that gives guys like Tariq Castro-Fields, some of these other fringe roster guys that are probably not going to make the roster. It gives them an opportunity to, stick around on the practice squad. And it's beneficial to the teams too, because sometimes you want to be able to develop those guys. Okay, yeah, he's not deserving of a spot now, but, in a year, 2 years time, he will be. So you want to keep those guys around. So yeah, 16 players I'll be able to keep. Tariq Castro-Fields definitely could be one of those guys. Now, and more in a general sense on the defensive players that I'm going to be looking at, I want to know what defensive lineman is going to play late in the game. And really, you can ask this about any position, right? Like, if you're playing to the end of the fourth quarter, the very end, it's probably not a good sign for you. And I mean, obviously, I want to see who of the defensive linemen is going to be playing late in the game because this defensive line is so stacked that one, it's going to give us an indication who's going to get cut, who's going to be the odd man out. And again, that's in every position. But the defensive line, I'm very curious about to know, which of these guys is going to stick around. They're all very talented, and most likely another team is going to be able to swoop. And I almost wonder, because they've been doing it for every year now, if the 49ers trade one of these guys out before the final roster cuts. So I don't know, something to keep an eye on. But yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see, who's still out there towards the end of the game. It's going to tell us a lot. It's unfortunate for some of these guys, but again, like I said, some of these guys will end up on the practice squad. And so, if you like a player, but they're maybe a fringe roster cut, maybe they make it on the practice squad and it's not the end for them. So, yeah, I mean, that's who I'm going to be looking at in this game. Really quickly before we end, just make sure you guys let me know, who are you guys going to be keeping an eye on in this one? Very curious. Let me look at some of these comments really quick. All right. Daryl asks, what should they do with Jimmy G? Cut or trade? Ooh, yeah, that's always a good discussion. I know the 49ers, like Jed York is like, we wouldn't mind keeping him or things like that. John Lynch has pretty much said the same thing. Kyle Shanahan said any scenario is possible. But to me, I think that's all BS. I mean, what else are they going to say? Yeah, we're definitely going to cut him. I mean, you always want to hold out even the smallest bit of hope that you might get something going for him, a trade. But I don't see it happening. I mean, at this point, every team that might be interested in Jimmy Garoppolo, which there aren't a lot of teams, the Browns, maybe the Seahawks, they're just going to wait to see what the 49ers do. And it's because they know that more than likely they're going to cut Jimmy Garoppolo. I would hate for Jimmy Garoppolo to stay on this roster and lose out on another player that could be on this roster. So I don't picture the 49ers keeping him around at all. And really, to have held him on this long really somewhat does a disservice to Jimmy Garoppolo, because as much as they mention that they want to they want to do right by him, and they have a lot of pride in doing right by their players, they haven't really done right by Jimmy by keeping him this long, because now you cut him right before, teams solidify their 53, or when teams are cutting down to 53, you leave him out there. Yeah, a team like the Seahawks might pick him up, but like, is he really going to get an opportunity to start right away when he hasn't had a chance to get to know a new team, an offense, things like that. So it's a little tough for, Jimmy Garoppolo to get cut and then suddenly he's supposed to catch on somewhere else and get an opportunity to start. I think it'll be easier on a team like the Seahawks maybe, but yeah, I don't know. But ultimately, I think they do cut him. Let's see. Let's get to some of these other comments. Swan Song says, it will be interesting to see what team picks up Jimmy G and for how much. Yeah, I mean, I am also curious. Like I said, probably the Seahawks and the Browns, probably the only teams that, make sense for him. Swan Song says maybe they can put Ambry on PUP. Maybe. I mean, he's hurt right now, right? But I figure he's gonna play tomorrow. Not sure though. I mean, if he is hurt, yeah, they could put him on PUP. That again opens up another roster spot. So Daryl says, if I was Jimmy G, I would retire. Oof. I don't know about that. He can still play. Yeah, Ty says he's only 30. Plenty of time to prove he can play. And I mean, let's not sugarcoat this. Like, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a bridge quarterback probably for the rest of his career. But he's going to be a quality bridge quarterback, so it's a little too early to retire for him at this point. Swan Song says, I just don't see Jimmy G taking a $7 million backup salary, but I could be wrong. At this point, does he have any other option? It's either that or $0. I mean, take your pick, He doesn't. The hope is if he signs a backup type of contract, the hope is that he would get an opportunity to eventually start and show teams what he has, and then, play it from there. Maybe next year that gives them an opportunity to get a bigger contract, so that's what they're going to be banking on. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it's going to be tough for him regardless of where he goes. Yeah, Ty says, if that's your only option and you want to play, why not? Yeah, you're going to get whatever you can. It's definitely better, beats not being on a team, but who knows? Who knows? Ty says, Steph, the final rush line will be Jackson, Omenihu, Armstead, and some guy named Bosa. Yes, as well as Kinlaw, who's, not much of a he'll be playing more on the inside, but Armstead will too. So yeah, can't forget about Kinlaw. He'll definitely be a menace on this defensive line. All right. Dawson says, need to make sure Lance don't get hurt first before trading Jimmy. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's not a bad thing. They're keeping Trey Lance insulated, protected. At this point, they should take a 7th for him. Something is better than nothing. If not, just cut him. Yeah, I mean, I would agree, but is anyone offering a 7th? It's not just the compensation that I think is the issue. It's Jimmy's contract. And on one hand, the 49ers would be stupid to pay any amount of that contract. And, on the other side, the team would also be stupid to pay Jimmy Garoppolo the 25, 26, whatever the hell he's worth, or whatever he's due. They would be dumb to pay him that much as well, when you're literally a week away from just getting him for half that or even less. So yeah, that no one's going to trade for him at this point. That ship sailed, unfortunately. Yep. Swan Song says the only way he gets traded is if the 49ers are willing to pay for part of his salary for a higher draft pick. And I don't know, would they do that? I think if that was on the table and the 49ers wanted to do that, it would have already been done. I don't know. Yeah, Dave says, I think the surgery messed everything up. I mean, it definitely did as far as timing, and John Lynch has not been really shy about admitting that they had trade discussions going, it was going well, and then, the surgery had to happen, so that killed everything. So, yeah, it was unfortunate for both sides, really. All right, y'all. I am excited for the game tomorrow. Excited to see Trey again. Excited to see some of these fringe players. I want to see who steps it up. There's always going to be someone that's going to surprise us. Really quickly, Ty asked, what games are you going to this season? It's still early, right? So I only know some of the early games in the season that I'll be at. I'll be at the home opener. I already forgot who they're playing in the home. Oh, the Seahawks, right? Playing the home. Yeah, they play the Seahawks in the home opener, and I'm definitely going to try to be at the Week 3 game against the Broncos. I haven't gotten my tickets yet. The ticket prices are ridiculous for that game. But since they'll be in Denver, I got to try to go to that one. Any means necessary. I'll try to, get in through a back door somewhere, somehow, some way. But yeah, as of right now, that's all I know. But, sometimes I might decide to go to a game spontaneously. I don't know. But for now, those two for sure. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. I'm going to be live later on with Jason and Leo for our Zaddy Ball podcast. So tune in later for that. And then, besides that, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Peace.